guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. The grace is found is where you are. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His.
So, hi everybody. Welcome to this episode of Follow Your Faith. Glad to be with you here today. On my right is Marty, and on my left over here is Jerry. And tonight you should have a lot of questions about a lot of things we're going to talk about tonight. And Steve, of course, is directing everything from his part over here on my left as well. And above us on our screen above is Mike and Karen Blaisdell, who graciously consented to join us, married 27 years. And so we're glad that you guys can be with us. Welcome, you too, as well. And I asked, before we get started, I asked Mike and Karen to kind of do the opening prayer for us today as we begin this discussion on mostly, almost exclusively about marriage. Thanks for coming, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yes.
Okay, we'll begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to talk about the wonderful sacrament of marriage. We ask you to bless all those who are watching, those who have been married for quite a while, those who are contemplating marriage, and those who have been married. And we ask you, Lord, to be with all of us as we take the time to talk about the importance of the sacrament and what it means in our daily lives and how we live a life of Christ through each other. And we ask this in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Beautiful. Thank you. Marty, I guess I'll turn everything over to you. And thanks, everybody, for joining us.
All right, Father, thank you. And Michael and Karen, thank you very much for being here. I just want to, and I mean nothing about the about them or what we're going to say tonight. I mean, this is a group of us talking about marriage. It doesn't mean we're right. It doesn't mean we're wrong. We're giving some perspective. Everybody's going to have. I don't want people to think, well, they said it has to be this way, because I don't see it that way at all. But and this is their experiences. I mean, they've been married 27 years. I told them at the beginning, their kids. Joyce and I are coming up on 51, and I think if someone asked me some of the questions I'm going to ask you, I really think our answers would be different. Not that one would be right and one would be wrong. It's all about perspective. And that's the one thing you learn when you come together as one. So I just want folks to say, you may have a different view than this, which is okay, which is the point of comment, please. If you don't agree with something we're saying, or you think it goes to another direction, Jerry is more than ready and willing to share. But
anything I was thinking about were church questions about church things,
Sure.
that's kind of stuff, but which I think a lot of misunderstandings. But anyway,
Yep.
I'm glad you're all
And,
here.
I mean, but it's a perspective, and I hope other people will share their perspective. But I want to start, Father, with you, because the catechism that we're dealing with tonight, the sacrament of holy matrimony, talks a lot about marriage in God's plan. So to set the stage so that we know where we're going, what is the plan of God regarding man and woman?
Well, the title of this whole section is sacraments. Actually, holy orders and marriage kind of come together.
Right, they're
here.
together, but we're just
We're
separating.
going to do marriage here, but sacraments in service of communion. So fundamentally, the basic idea here is the whole point of marriage is to bring people together to create communion, to create family, because we all so desperately need it. More and more in my priesthood, I deal with people who have not grown up in a situation of communion. And there is such remarkable harm that comes from all that in people's lives. And then I meet people like Karen and Mike who have grown up in situations where there was this communion, and how much healthier relationships in life can be. So it's all about this coming together in communion, our communion with one another, our communion with ourselves, and also our communion with God. So I think all of those things, I think fundamentally, and by the way, baptism, confirmation, Eucharist are about God breaking into our lives in a life of holiness. They're sacraments of initiation. Here we're talking about sacraments where by being married, we don't become holy. By serving one another, by acting, we become holy in marriage and holy orders. Baptism, confirmation, Eucharist make us holy or give us God breaking into our lives. He initiates all of that, but by our acting is how we become holy as priests, as married people. And so it's very, very different in its approach to how God operates in these particular sacraments.
Karen and Mike, curiosity, when you get married, I don't know how old you guys were. If you've been married 27 years, you must have been 10 because you look so young now. But
Actually, we were older when we got married.
my point is this, is that was there a lot of thought, because you have a bazillion other things to think about when you're getting married. That's just the culture we live in. It's a lot. There's a lot going on. From the beginning, did God have a role in all of that, or does he kind of get shoved aside just a little because invitations and dinners and who's coming and who's going to be this and what are we going to wear and all that? Or was it always part of your plan? Was he always part of your plan?
I'll tell you what, I can answer that from my perspective. I would say initially no, but when we started, and here again, you kind of think back on it, we met with Father Tom Carapella. That's who married us. He was up at St. Francis, and I was working there at the time. And we were meeting with him and talking about, he just wanted to he was very good at working with us. And also when we were preparing for, the Mass, and the thought that we put into it. And he was, that was sort of like a journey for me, just because I realized what it meant to Karen to be able to do this, the ceremony, and that she wanted it to be, she wanted it to be just right. And it meant something. It wasn't just make it look good. I mean, she wanted the readings to mean something. And that meant something to me at the time. It really, and still does. I mean, that was the beginning of, for me, that was a definite leap in my faith journey.
Karen, were you on? It seems I'm not trying to put words in Michael's mouth, but it sounds like that was a little bit more important to you than it was to him at the time. Fair enough.
From the very beginning, the marriage was much more important to me than the wedding, and that had to do with how we did our pre-Cana or marriage prep. It had to do with how we prepared them. The love that went into preparing the mass was similar, if not more important, than the love that went into planning the party. And I think that was really an essential part of how we started things. And Michael will tell you, he kind of learned this along the way, but it was really important for me from the beginning.
Yeah. One of the things I think is interesting is when we were planning the do our pre-Cana, Karen was shopping around for the longest one we could do. She said, I think someone told us, like, I can't remember if it was our priest said, oh, there's one you could probably do, would be an afternoon. No, that won't work. You know what? You have anything that could be a week, maybe, or two? No, it was a weekender. And that's what we did. We did a
and listen to the priest always trying to let you off the hook. I mean, well, that wasn't great. But Karen, it sounds like you were evangelizing from the very beginning.
I was trying anyway.
Do you think that is still part of marriage today? And not trying to be critical of anyone, but is there that type of focus? You may have, sounds to me like it may have been what was important in your own homes while you were growing up. I mean, we are consumed with the party and all of the stuff that comes with it now because it has become, it's a big business, and everything has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, then my wedding day is ruined. Do you think that maybe we have lost sight of that? Or is it?
I have an answer to that one, but I'll wait till these guys speak. Go ahead. I have an answer to that one.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the individual, because we can say our daughter Maggie got married in May, and the marriage was just as important, if not more important to her than the day. And I think that there are people out there who see it as a sacramental marriage. But unfortunately, with our culture and the way that, we socialize and everything else, it's become the fact that this wedding stuff's a big business because that's what people are focused on. If they would spend as much time thinking about their marriage as they did about their wedding, I think we'd cut the divorce rate in half.
But also, too, I think today people are more concerned about their marriages than ever in my experience. I rarely have a couple walk in and just say, well, we just want a nice venue. They got venues all over the place. They don't need it to go into church. The ones that I experience, I find them deadly serious about what they're doing. More so in the last 10 years than ever before. Prior to that, not so much. But now that it has become big business, if you're coming to get married in the church, you're doing it on purpose. And they are serious about, I have never in the last, 10 years, I guess I would say, maybe it was never, but I had a couple ever complain about the preparation. Never. They're very serious now more than ever, I think, in my experience as a priest.
The Catechism in the beginning of this section writes this: Holy Scripture affirms that man and woman were created for one another. It's not good that the man should be alone. The woman, flesh of his flesh, his equal, his nearest in all things, is given to him by God as a helpmate. She thus represents God, from whom comes our help. Therefore, a man leaves his father and his mother and cleaves to his wife, and they become one flesh. Karen and Mike, is that a fair representation of marriage and in the way you look at it in the abstract and what it's meant for you?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that a lot. The experience, we had different experiences early on with our families. Our families of origin, that's what we like to call it, about breaking away. And there's expectations that the family has sometimes, and at least one of the ways we have to realize it, where I had to realize more than Karen. She was much better at this part than me. Was, hey, we're one body, one flesh, and this is the priority right now. This is the priority from now and forever. And family is second, and that took a little bit of
years.
Yeah, it took some years to get that understanding for both me and for family and understand that this is the priority right here.
But
And
I think for myself, it was a lot easier. When we got married, I had been independent. I'd been on my own for 10 years or so. And my mom had passed away when I was in my early 20s. So I didn't have that pull of my parents expecting me to be over visiting all the time. But Michael lived at home, and when he got married, and that was a big change to go from living at home to living with me and having it being very different. So I think your life experience has a lot to do with how well you can enter into that.
It's huge. What you say is huge. That's very important. Maybe we could talk about that reading now.
You mentioned it. Actually, it was one of our readings, a part of one of our readings this morning. Maybe explain why we didn't have the whole reading, or talk about why this is controversial the right word?
I don't think it's controversial.
I think there are people who question it,
Maybe,
misunderstand it.
yeah, misunderstood. Now, if I could just read the part that we now there was, by the way, we didn't cheat. There was a shorter version which we were allowed to do. We chose the shorter version of all that. It begins, and I just want to begin this first sentence, and then I want you two to talk about this. It says, "Be subordinate to one another out of reverence for Christ." It seems to me that both persons are supposed to be subordinate to one another, that there's a unique way in which men are subordinate, or the husband's subordinate to his wife, and the wife is subordinate to her husband. I think there's a uniqueness to that. I don't know what you guys think about that. That's just simply, that's my thought, my take on the text, but that's the first sentence, which we kind of left out, which I think is a good one.
Yeah, I would say that one thing that has to be really essential to marriage, at least for our marriage, is that we have to be careful that we're not pompous, or we're not bossy, or we're not those things, because we can't be that and still be followers of Christ. So if we are Christians and we believe that that is who we are and how we live, I couldn't treat him as a second-class citizen, or I couldn't, do that. We kind of defer to each other first, and then see what the best choice is. But like he won't say, well, I'm the husband, you need to be subordinate to me. I've never heard that in my entire marriage, and I never expect to, but we defer to each other before we make decisions, so that we know that we're doing what's best for both of us.
right. Well, one of the an example that we early on, the dinner table, the way our it's long, and growing up, my father sat at the end. I think Karen's father sat at the end. Well, when what we did is we both sat at the one end. It was sort of an oblong table, if you know what I'm talking, rounded ends. And Karen and I sat at the end together, and that's how we sat together for meals the entire time. We had children, so we were at the end of the table. And I always thought that was a good way to represent to them how we were equals at the table.
And and do you think there's a uniqueness to a woman's subordination and a uniqueness to a man's? I'm just curious about that.
I think it depends. Like we have a relatively traditional family, where I stayed home with the kids and raised the kids, and Michael worked, and then I ended up working outside the home when the kids were in school. So in that early time, when it was definitely more traditional, a lot of the decisions he made, because that was his role. And then as time went on, we made a lot of those decisions together. But I never looked at it like, oh, he's in charge of what's going on here.
Yeah. Now the rest of it, the part that we skipped, wives should be subordinate to their husbands as if to the Lord. For the husband is head of his wife, just as Christ is head of the church, he himself the Savior of the body. As the church is subordinate to Christ, so wives should be subordinate to their husbands in everything. That's where every man stops reading, and they kind of miss the whole point of the reading. Then it goes on to say, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and died for her. So whenever a husband starts dying for his wife and washing her feet, which Jesus did, then I would think that maybe she might consider being subordinate in her role, going back and forth. Then it kind of goes on with the reading that we had. Now, here's the point of the reading. I think really, if you go down below, it says, this is a great mystery, but I speak in reference to Christ and his church. So when you get married in the church, what you are becoming is an expression, a sacrament, a manifestation, a prophetic manifestation of Christ and his church. and the relationship between the two of them together as well. So I don't know, that's the part that we kind of left out. Anybody have any comments on that one? They're welcome to comment with us on that. But I left it out because I thought it's always misunderstood. Every man snickers, And as we were talking in the back of the church before Mass for prayer, and one person said, "Yeah, I'm the head of the household. My wife told me I was allowed to be in." So anyway, it was a joke, by the way. Anyway, he was making a joke, which we all got. But so any thoughts on the reading itself in regards to that scripture that Marty just read to us? The rest of it
the rest of it, in which he said that that woman, flesh of his flesh, his equal, his nearest in all things, given to him by God as a helpmate. She thus represents God, from whom comes our help.
Yeah.
Not subservient, but together.
Well, I think the idea that we live out that sacrament in a way that others can see that's how it works is also an important part of it. And the idea that how we are with each other should be how the church, Christ is with the church. I mean, I don't think we live our daily lives thinking it that way, but there are times when you do ponder what is our role as a married couple.
Mm-hmm.
And at those times, I think we really think about those things.
Right. And that's where I think the whole idea of uniqueness of subordination. But then Jesus always talked about going back before the fall when he talked about marriage, Adam and Eve before the fall, not afterwards. So anyway, it's meant to be much more radical than we allow it to be in the culture. That's for sure.
The Catechism continues with this: every man experiences evil around him and within himself. This experience makes itself felt in the relationships between man and woman. Their union has always been threatened by discord, a spirit of domination, infidelity, jealousy, and conflicts that can escalate into hatred and separation. So my question is, if you take that passage literally, it's obvious the church knew marriage would be very difficult. Is it tougher than you guys expected? I mean, you look at it at a different perspective now. You've been together as man and wife for 27 years. Has it been what you thought it was going to be?
I can honestly say, and I say this to everybody, I don't think a couple that gets married has any clue what life's going to be like after they're married. And to me, anybody who said, "Oh, it's always been wonderful," and
oh yeah, the ones that say we've never had a fight, yeah, you're lying.
Yeah,
you're lying.
Denial, or they have no clue what they're talking about.
Exactly.
I can just, when we did marriage prep, it's an image I'll never forget. They were talking about what is your marriage covenant. And they explained it like your marriage covenant, and they had this glass bowl that was there. And then they put in vinegar, which of course was Michael, oil, right? Oil. and oil, which was
Michael is the vinegar. I just want to make sure I got that right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was water, but she'll go with vinegar.
Whatever. But basically it was kind of like if Father talks about his chocolate milk thing. If you keep moving it around, you have a nice mix of the two of you. If you don't do anything for your marriage, you can separate. But to me, the one thing that always stayed in my mind is that bowl is the covenant. When we break that covenant, we have neither of us.
Wow.
And
Nice image.
that idea of that covenant was sometimes when things were bad, that bowl was the only thing I felt like I had. And because we had a sacramental marriage, we worked towards making sure we could fill it up again. Yeah. But I think that I can only speak in the eye, like we learn how to speak in the eye. I can speak for myself that sometimes when marriage is difficult, and it was for us for a period of time, that bowl was the only thing I had, and I really relied on it to get us through to the next part. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, that was I think that's. Yeah, I don't know if I can add much more to that. That's we talked at length about that.
Can I ask now? 27 years, is it richer than you thought it would be? Like all your preconceived notions died probably within the first couple of years or something, But then again, is there a richness, a depth? Maybe that's what I'm looking for. A depth that you have that you didn't know you would find.
Well, I mean. For me to answer that, I mean, I would say, and I don't know I forget authors and so forth, but the best version of yourself.
Matthew Kelly.
Yeah, I've always looked at it like Karen has drawn the best person that I can be out of me. I just don't and help cultivate that. I went through a lot of growth. Let's just put it that way. After through our marriage, for sure.
I love that. I love that. That's a good sign you're supposed to be married, I think. I heard one wife say to me one time, she says, he makes me a better person.
Right.
That's pretty good. That's
Jerry,
pretty good.
Yeah.
people chiming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Arlene
think,
said,
Wait, go ahead. Go
Go
ahead.
Karen.
No, I thought you said Karen. Go ahead, Jerry.
Go ahead.
Arlene said, I learned that marriage is hard because two people becoming one is not possible by human means alone. Jesus needs to enter their human love and add his divine love to the equation.
Very beautiful. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
All right. Father, this is one for you because the catechism then makes it sound like we are all obliged to get married. Like we're not supposed to be single. We're supposed to go and meet someone, both sides, Is that why would, maybe I'm reading more into it but that's what the whole point of it talks about, that men and women are designed to be, come together.
Whenever you're like me and you're knocking around as a 20 or some year old and you're not married and you're not dating somebody, I don't know what people think of you, everything else. They're like, you think something wrong with you, and so this whole idea of being called to celibacy was a hard road in my 20s, and okay, here I am. I go to the seminary, get ordained a priest, so now I'm legitimate in some sense as a celibate. But let's suppose I just stayed single, I didn't do all that stuff. People were trying to fix me up all over the place. So they did. It's always a disaster. But I just want to share a piece of scripture here where the disciples asked Jesus, he talks about marriage and divorce, and then they say something to the effect, well, then who can be married? And so Jesus says, some are incapable of marriage because they were born so, some because they were made so by others. I guess the eunuchs, I guess they made people that, the people that were in charge of money, they made them, anyway, that's another story. Renounce marriage and then there are others who renounce marriage for the sake of the kingdom. Whoever can accept this ought to accept it. And Jesus himself was never married. And that was on purpose because of marriage, if I'm reading the catechism, marriage is about an exclusive relationship. When you're married, your relationship together is exclusive. If Jesus loves us all, he had to be celibate because he couldn't have an exclusive relation with somebody, because let's suppose he got married to somebody like Mary Magdalene or something, and he said, well, I think I'm going to go out and die for the sins of the world. Oh, no, you're not. She has rights over him, and you're going to go to work tomorrow. You're going to, pull in the paycheck and stuff. So she had rights over him, and she'd be right if she said that, in a sense. So, Jesus couldn't possibly be. And so, no, celibacy is a path. There's no doubt about it. It's a definite path. And even though Jesus says that verse there, and he wasn't. So that's for everybody. Marriage isn't for everybody, neither is mine. I watch married people, and I don't watch them in any sense of envy whatsoever. If priests could get married tomorrow, I wouldn't get married because that's not my way. But I honor it. And I love to talk to people about their married life and their married love with each other. It's just not my path. That's all.
I want to talk some about prep because when Joyce and I got married, now this was a different time. It was 1973.
It was a long, long time ago.
Yes, thank you. It was a long, long time ago. And you're still older than I am, so it would have been longer for you. But he is, and we make this point a lot. But anyway, it was 1973. I was 21. She was 20.
Wow.
But you got married in those days around that age, because if you were, if you got to 25 and you weren't married, they wanted to know what was wrong with you.
See?
There's no way we had any idea what we were getting into. It's impossible. I was a father at 22, and as my own grandsons grew up, and I'd look at, and I'd think, How did this happen? So prep then, it was about, we knew we loved, at least we thought we knew we loved each other. And I can tell you, after almost 51 years, we hit that one right, because that love has deepened. There's been a lot of rocky roads in that journey. But now I'm confident. I've always been confident. I really believe it. I feel it because we were meant. It was supposed to happen. But at that age, and we're thinking, like people say, did you prep for your marriage? Did you ask God? Did I ask God? All I was thinking of, where do I have to be? And I mean, it was literally what time, dress nice. And then, go beyond that and try to figure out. One of the things I remember, we ran out of alcohol at our reception, an hour before the thing was supposed to end. And I'm thinking, well, what? How does this stuff happen? There were all those things. There was no
You
spirituality.
needed Jesus in your wedding
Well,
reception.
I mean, we got married in a church and it was what it was supposed to. Yeah, well, I actually said at one point, is there somebody around here that can do that wine trick? Because we need help right now. But I mean, so did you guys know when you decided to get married exactly what you were getting into? And did did that change the way you prepared? Did you get to a point a month afterwards going, okay, or, I don't know. I don't know how, I know in our case, it was day by day because we were so young. We didn't know what to think or what to react or what to believe. I mean, we stuck together and that was a challenge because we were young. We were kids, for crying out loud. You guys were a little older than that, but still that whole prep thing. I mean, is there ever a point going through that where you knew exactly you were doing the right thing, or were there any doubts at any time?
Well, when we met, I was 28 and he was 29. And by the time we met, all my friends had already been married. So I was kind of like the last one. And I remember my niece Claire used to say, like, if you hurt yourself and you'll get better before you get married, right? She would say, oh, it'll get better before Aunt Karen gets married, because they figured it was never going to happen. Yeah.
See how they treat you. That's how people treat you, with all that. They do that, yeah.
But because we got married older, we didn't take a lot of time in our early marriage to really get to know each other before we started a family. Because I was 31 when our oldest was born, and it was kind of like we just started with the family, and really we kind of just started and kept going. And it wasn't until I saw the light at the end of the tunnel of empty nesting that I realized we need to work on our marriage, because he won't know who I am and I won't know who he is, and it'll just be the two of us in the house, and we'll look at each other saying, what the heck? So we were just so busy with the kids and the marriage, and we just kind of went along. And then I saw it probably about 4 years before our youngest went to college, and I'm like, if we don't do something for each other, there's not going to be anything here when the kids go. So we spent for a good 4 years really working on our marriage. And when you said, Father, is it better than it's ever been? It truly is. Mm-hmm. And it's better than I ever thought it could be, because that wasn't our experience in the beginning.
Great.
Our family was really important to us. Those 3 kids, I always felt was I can speak for myself. It was my vocation to be their mother. And sometimes that took precedence over our marriage, which is never good.
Right.
And if I could give anybody advice, it's like, keep dating, do that whole thing so that you know each other, so that when it is just the two of you, you're so happy to be back together. I think that's essential.
My parents did that, and I remember them going out on dates, and that was a big deal. I mean, we just knew we weren't even allowed their bedroom. We knew their relationship was exclusive, and there's boundaries there. And I think kids, when they know that and their parents love each other, there's a security in that. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I can remember our wedding day. We got married in November. It was a cool, crisp day. The sun was, and I remember the ceremony. I don't remember everything that Monsignor said to us, because my wife would. She could tell you word for word. But last November, we bought ourselves new wedding rings. And we came to church with our family, and we renewed our vows. And I can tell you without any question, that meant so much more. And I'm not denigrating our marriage ceremony. It was beautiful, and it was important, and it was part of what we wanted. But that 50-year mark with the family around us, good, bad, or indifferent, they've grown. This is who they are, and they're here with us. And we were at our Mother of Sorrows and Father Bless. I mean, it was like, okay, it really was worth it, right? It was, God has been, and God, listen, God was not a big part of my life for a long time. and anybody who knows me will understand that. And it's a completely different thing for me, but a lot of things have happened to me. It brought me a lot closer to God, and I'm still trying to understand all of that. But it was that sense of, when we were 20 and 21, I don't know that we knew what the heck we were doing. We were just doing what everybody said you do. You know, you get married and then you go have a family. And we were similar in that Joyce stopped working when our first was born and didn't go back. We have two. We have a girl and a boy. And she didn't go back to work until the youngest was in school, which helped them immensely. Their mother guided them through that early developmental time. Now, we were fortunate enough we could do it. Today's world, it's kind of difficult, you know, but that culmination of 50 some years, and it was like, and when I look at her that day, and I could still see it while we're standing in front of the altar at church, and it was so different. It was like, yeah, this was a good thing. But that's got to be daunting for a lot of people, don't you think? I mean, you don't know that when you get married, or do you? I don't know. Maybe you do. You think most people understand what's coming?
I'll tell you what, we talked earlier about the pre-Cana, and we went through those classes, and we did that weekend in Altoona, and we learned a lot there. And we also did New Baltimore. We
We were part of the marriage prep team for the diocese when our kids were little.
Right, yeah, and that was good. But Karen, and here again, this is part of that vision that she had for us. I didn't necessarily see it at the time, but I went along because it was the right thing to do. We would get out and help couples, as you do with that. It was very good, and I think it helped us. It gave us a weekend away. Relatives would watch the kids, and we would go down and help out. And it was really interesting watching other couples, that are engaged couples, come there and then talk about their, what they need to talk about. We talk about finances and, all the different things you talk about. And we always gave us a lot of discussion points. And I think I grew from that, I can say for sure. But yeah, Karen's right when she said there was some work to do after we, after we realized, or she realized, and then I realized that we needed to make sure that we had properly cultivated our marriage then for post, where the kids were gone. And that was, that took some work. And mostly on my side, I'd say I had to, I got some counseling help with that, which is great. I tell everybody that story because I think sometimes you need external help to help answer the questions, Father, you say this a lot. You say you have to put flesh on it, right? I think that's how you say it. Mm-hmm. You have to explain it to someone. And then when you hear yourself explaining it, it just means so much more to you. And I had a lot of friends through small group that I was able to reach out to help me work through that. And that was a definite learning experience for me. And I make sure, and just like right now on this Zoom, I don't have a problem talking about it because I think that's healthy. I think if I can offer that to someone else, if someone else says they're having a difficulty or having a troubled time, I always try to explain, hey, I went through some of this myself, and you need to reach out and talk to someone.
Yeah,
find someone that you trust.
Yeah. No question about that. I think the fact that you say you did some counseling and stuff, that's awesome. I did counseling in my life about different things too. Every once in a while you need to talk somebody else, say it out loud, let someone else, and then you hear it yourself, and it comes to what you have a different understanding of all that. And you had your friends, a small group. Awesome.
Father, I'm curious, what's your take or what's your plan when you do marriage prep? And I say that because I go back to pre-Cana. We were lectured. We were told we'll do this, but we won't do this. I mean, it was not a welcoming thing. It was not, I'm going to try to help the two of you find a way to get together. It was, these are the rules and you better not break them. And I didn't think that was helpful at all.
No.
Trying to figure this all out because there's a lot. So when you do pre-marriage counseling? What's the goal, or how do you try to get there? Because it's intimidating.
Well, I open up with a talk that I give them about marriage, because marriage is our culture. Marriage means a lot of different things. So I give a talk about Christian marriage. But then again, there's many options. And the one thing I do to what I taught, there's a thing called focus. I'm not sure you guys ever did. That's probably about after your time, but
I heard of it, but we've never done it.
it is an excellent tool. It's a survey that they take of agree and disagree. And I go through that with them. That to me, it takes about an hour or so. It's one of the best ways of having a dialogue. And so there's all these options of things they can do. But they want to do them. Yeah, I think young couples today, they see the train wrecks that are out there as far as marriage are concerned, and they don't want that to happen to them. And so they're pretty serious. They're not cocky about anything. And they're pretty serious, and I don't mind marriage preparation at all, not at all.
Do you think this is for you, Mike and Karen? How important is that? You know, young people that maybe they're not sitting at home tonight watching this, but through the upcoming week, maybe somebody's going to say, hey, there's some good advice in this. What would you tell them about that? Because again, that's intimidating. You want to go sit and basically have someone, and I'm sorry, but this was always one of me, never been married, and now he's going to tell me how I should be married. And that was a bit of, not friction, but it was like, what do you know? I mean, I'm just being honest about it. But how important do you think that spiritual participation before marriage is if you want to build a lasting platform?
I mean, I think it's extremely important, not even for us, but when we were on the marriage prep team, you would see some things and conversations the couples would have, and you would know, oh, they're pretty solid.
Right.
Or you have other kids that they would be talking, you're like, oh, this is never going to work. So for example, we did a speaker listener exercise with people, and we'd have to go by and listen to their conversations to see if they're using the technique right. And this one couple was talking about, should we get a dog or not? So they were going through that, should we get a dog or not? Like, okay, that's a normal conversation. And we went past this other couple, and she was saying, I don't think I want your mother at my wedding. I'm like, well,
now
that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of get an idea of where people are. And I think it's a good to have solid people leading those groups, because they can help, lovingly show people what they're actually going to get into so that they're prepared a little bit. And
Well,
I think a lot of the practical stuff.
I know when we were a pre-Cana team, the priest who married us said, you guys will be great. Why don't you come do this? And it was like, we're not counselors, but anyway, do it. Well, the problem we had is there were people on the team. They would sit there, they'd talk about whether it was finances or sex or, they give you a whole list and they'd start talking, and Joyce and I would look at each other like, what planet are these people from? Because that's nothing. They were giving advice, and it was really difficult for us because thinking our perspective is a little different. But what do? Do we say anything? Well, we did. We just said, that's fine. But just so you know, here's the way we attacked it. Because I thought if they really listen to what they just heard, that's a train wreck headed for bad things. Because it was regimented. It was like, you will do this, and don't worry if your spouse doesn't agree, that's his problem. And I'm sitting there going,
you're into a lot of regimented stuff.
Yeah, well, it was the early 70s, man. That's what it was. But now today, I mean, people get divorced all the time. I mean, it's like, I want to change what I want for dinner tonight. I mean, literally, there's like no consequence. Marriage, if it doesn't work, you just end it.
It's painful. It's a painful thing for anybody who goes through that. So.
And even when you talk about sacramental marriage, like I said about that container, and you have that sacramental, that has to be the way we look at it for everything in our family. So for example, when our youngest would give us a hard time about going to church, for example, I don't really want to go to church. I'd say, I took a vow the day I got married that you're mine until you're 18, and I'm going to raise you in the church. And we took our vows seriously, and that's what's going to happen. And Michael used to say, well, you're our ward until you're no longer our ward.
They always are. But
that's what happens is you have to take the whole picture as one. You can't pick and choose,
Right.
Absolutely.
If you want to say anything on that.
Mike, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, that's
One thing though I want to add is you were talking about your wedding day, and one thing we did as a ritual, I guess you would say, is every year on our anniversary, watch the videotape.
Oh, we lost you there.
Yeah.
Our wedding.
You had a video. See,
watch a video of your marriage.
We have a video of our wedding, and we watch it every year on our anniversary. And when
Wow.
when the kids came along, they watched it with us. And there's so many things, that Michael will say, that came from that video.
Right.
So, we are very in tune with what actually happened on our wedding day, and that really helped us throughout too.
I don't
Yeah.
believe there was such a thing as video recording when we got married, Jerry.
No, not
73, I don't-
73, yeah.
Maybe somebody
When you
taking
work
home
at a TV
movies.
station.
I didn't work at a TV station
Oh.
then.
But anyway,
When you were
But
J.J.
anyway.
Jefferson.
All right. The Catechism in paragraph 1643, and this is always let's be honest, this is the toughest subject when it comes to talking about wedding and matrimony. It's called the Goods and Requirements of Conjugal Love. And this is the Catechism's word. It involves a totality in which all the elements of the person enter appeal of the body and instinct, power of feeling and affectivity, aspiration of the spirit, and of will. And I read that 3 times and then wrote the next thing, Father. Said, would you translate that for us? 'Cause
I read that.
I was lost. I had no idea what they were talking about.
I thought that was the most beautiful
See,
thing.
that's why you're here. So,
So,
help me understand that.
And okay, so it says conjugal love, which we all are talking about sex now. Whenever I counsel folks, I always say sex isn't good, sex isn't bad, sex is sacred. It is as holy as what we do over there in church. We call what we do over there in church Holy Communion. What a husband and wife does in their bedroom is a Holy Communion. And there is little differences between the two. It involves a totality, which means it's about every single dimension of your person, in which all the elements of the person enter, appeal to the body and instinct, which is, the whole idea of sex. There's a sort of instinctual part of all that. Power of feeling and affectivity, aspiration of the spirit and will. By the way, there's a question in the focus survey that says, do you believe that your relationship with your wife is holy in the bedroom? Sex, I don't know what the other question really is. And a lot of them say they're uncertain or they don't believe so. Whenever the church's claim is that is a holy thing that happens in the bedroom. Goes on to say, aspiration of the spirit and will. It aims at a deeper personal unity between the two persons, a unity that beyond union of one flesh leads to a forming of one heart and one soul. Whenever I taught in school, we would always say, whenever you have sex with somebody, you put super glue here, boom, you put them together, and there you got it. Now, if I'm having sex with a whole bunch of different people, and say I pull that together and I go like this, well, part of this is on here and part of here is on here. You never forget anybody you had sex with. Would that make, I'm not going to ask that as a personal question. I would claim that you never forget anybody that you have sex with. And then it goes on to say, and people say, about getting married or me, having sex with somebody else. Here's the thing I think it matters. It demands indissolubility and faithfulness. If I'm having sex with somebody in my life, I know in my soul that if I'm not waking up with them the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day, there's something radically wrong with that. That it has to be that way. Indissolubility and faithfulness and definitive mutual giving and open to fertility. If it's a Christian act, it has to be that. Now, we can talk about that one someday. That's an hour conversation of what that all means. But I found that paragraph to be remarkably beautiful. Now, you guys don't have that in front of you, and I do. But what struck you about that section?
I personally think it's this. If I could step back just 1 second. When I was growing up, all you ever heard was sex was bad, so you just avoid it. And then when you're married, somehow it's magically amazing. But before that, it's
All of a sudden,
crappy.
you're allowed to have sex or something.
Right after you're allowed. And I
Yeah.
think that was something that was important to both of us. That union has to be just us. So
Has to
that
be.
it has to be.
Has to be.
and it has to be in the context of a marriage relationship, not a dating relationship. So we were very fortunate that we waited till we got married because that was an important union. What was your famous line about that? He always says that once you do it, you can't get it back.
Right.
And if we're waiting till we're married, then that's the best gift we can give each other, at a wedding. But if we do it before we get married, we can't get that back. We can't go back and say, oh, let's forget that we did that. You can't. And then, the other side of that coin is the whole idea of natural family planning and all that we accepted as part of who we were as Catholic Christians, because that was an important part of what we believe God was teaching us.
Right.
And that whole thing really helped us to have a better communication relationship on some level, on certain levels.
The natural family planning. When we met with a couple to learn how that to work through that and learn. And I mean, that was it definitely it made me part of the equation with how that all
Yes.
works. And that here again, that's another whole hour you could go talking about that
Yes,
and
yes,
how that
yes.
works.
Yep.
But I really liked it because here again I'm more sciencey, and just the fact that that there was they were able to explain it. But what I loved was I was part of the charting part of it, and we had to work together for when we were ready to conceive and when we weren't. And I mean, it was just a really I just felt like I was part of the equation with that.
And it made a big
Birth
difference.
control. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Karen. Go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say the other side of that is we raised our kids and we kept none of that secret. They all knew that this is how we did things and that it worked, and that sex is best when you wait for marriage because of the commitment. And we were never like, oh, that's so bad. We explained to the kids why you wait and why it's so important. And if I could recommend a book that I read, I think it's a phenomenal book for anybody, especially people who aren't married yet. It's called Sheet Music. And I have to think about the author, Kevin Lehman. And it's a Christian-based book, but it explains this whole idea of the beauty of a sexual relationship in marriage. And I would recommend it to anybody who's trying to decide that, or it has, people ready to get married. It's a wonderful thing.
And one of the great inequalities about marriage is that birth control becomes the woman's problem, and the man is able to do it. He's lazy in that regard, and you're fertile tonight or something. And so, and I say here I am, I'm an old guy, and so I say to these young couples, I say to the woman especially, if you're on birth control, which means you're available 24/7, and I ask this rhetorically. And I say, do you ever wonder, and don't answer me, if he really loves me or if I'm just convenient? Because he never has to restrain himself. And I would say for a man who never has to restrain himself sexually, he never grows up as a man. He's always going to be a big boy because he never learns to say no to himself in that regard. And you have to do that out of respect for your spouse. And so I think the natural methods, there's so many built-in ways in which that's healthy for a relationship for both man and the woman. It's just remarkable to me in so many ways. And by the way, the divorce rate, the last I saw for people using natural methods is like 5%. And I forget what the national average is, like 50 or something like that. And I said that to the one couple one time, and the one guy said, well, that's because you're more dedicated. I said, well, yeah, oh, yeah, so duh, so anyway, so I'm all in on that one.
Yeah, when we got married, I had a couple of friends I told that was our plan, and the first one said, oh, well, we'll see you at the christening because you're going to be having a gazillion babies.
Right,
and the second one was like, how could you deny your husband? I'm thinking, what are you talking about?
See, there again is this same old stuff about, the poor man has his needs. Baloney. I got a more powerful word for that one, but baloney will do here tonight.
I think we got it.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I know I did.
The poor baby, he has got, you deny.
Okay. We'll move on of your baloney. We only have a few minutes left. And Father, you want, and guys, I'd like you to chime in here as you wish. Father said when we were planning this, he said, I get so many questions about divorce, remarriage, annulments. So I'd like to give you the opportunity. What kind of questions do you get? What kind of answers do you? Again, divorce has become a thing anymore where, all right, it's not working out. Let's just end it. Mm-hmm. It's not quite as simple as that because it is a legal precedent you have to go through. But, and so here's your time. What kind of questions you get?
The question that people ask are about annulments and about how difficult they are, and they're not difficult. There is no cost to them. And I would recommend anybody, and you guys chime in because I'm just going to go off here for about a minute. If you've been married and divorced, you should be going to communion, number one. The only time the communion becomes an issue with all that is whenever you're remarried outside the church with all that. But please, I've talked to so many people. Why didn't you try to get an annulment years ago for all this? Well, we didn't think it was possible, and it cost too much, doesn't cost anything. And they thought it was an arduous process, and it's not. It's not an arduous process. So annulments, I would, but divorce is a tragedy, an absolute tragedy. In the church, there's no such thing as divorce. Divorce is a civil thing. And then there's the annulment process, which is completely different. An annulment is trying to determine whether the marriage occurred in the first place. In a divorce, a marriage occurred and something happened and broke it. We would say that's not possible for an actual Christian marriage. So those things. And then people ask questions about, we were talking about beforehand. What happens if I got married? I'm Catholic. I got married outside the church. And do I have to go through annulment? And the answer is no. There's a thing called an absence of form. Catholics are bound to the rite of marriage in the church. So we see marriage in two ways. We see marriage as something civil that happens, that you get a marriage license for up at the courthouse. But we also see marriage as something that's sacramental. And that's the part we're most interested in, the sacramental part. Now, in our country, they go together as one. But other countries, they don't. So we've had people that got married here sacramentally, and then, no. They get married sacramentally, then later on they get married civilly, by a JP. So you can't separate those two things. I'm just kind of going off here a little bit. Any thoughts or questions, or maybe some questions I should be answering about all that? Anything I'm missing?
I think I know couples in this annulment thing, and you're right. There's a lot of misconceptions, misinformation. Everybody knows this is, like you said, somebody said it's going to cost X thousands of dollars, and it's not. But that's all about the things we're talking about if it doesn't work. And let's be honest. I mean, there's times where people grow apart. You guys think that's that's entirely possible. I've known people who ended their marriage not because they didn't like each other. They just didn't find what they wanted out of each other. And that goes back to the whole premise. And I'm curious from after 27 years of marriage, the people who say we're staying married because of the kids. We don't want to put our children through this, or it's just better for everybody if we do this. And I'm just curious what your own perspective, if someone in that situation came to you and said, okay, you guys have been married for a while, there's really nothing here anymore for us. What do we do? What would you tell them?
I would say that the most important thing is that until they've exhausted all of the counseling that's possible for them, and find a good counselor, because we went through a couple counselors before we found a counselor that really worked for us. And it's like you can't let it go until you've exhausted everything. And I think that's really important, because there's probably a time in our marriage where I thought the only thing that good came of it was those 3 beautiful kids, and because there really wasn't much else. But I think there's hope out there that when you go to a good counselor and you find someone who helps you reconnect, because I could have easily said, when Eli went off to college, okay, we kind of grown apart. It's time for me to have whatever I deserve. But what I didn't realize is what I deserved and the marriage I could want actually came with Michael. But there were many times where I thought, no, it must be someone else. So I think there's so many marriages that are ending that have a chance, and they just don't take.
There was someone that said, what you need to do when the marriage is not going well is write down 25 things you want your spouse to be. Once you've written down the 25 things you want your spouse to be, now you go be them yourself. And then once you do that, then maybe you can go from there. But
Father, we have a comment I want to get to him before we're out of time, Jerry.
Yeah, actually, Brother Russ, he said annulment is counseling. You know what he what he means by that?
An annulment helped Russ through helped heal him. Okay. Annulment, I completely agree. Annulments are healing. If you need to go, an annulment can heal the wound. I have so many people say, I don't want to do an annulment because I don't want to relive all that. You got to work it through and heal. It can heal you. Absolutely. I completely agree with that.
As we close, guys, again, I think that's possible that sometime people will call up this episode to young people and say, here, maybe it'll help you. And there's no checklist. I mean, there's no perfect way to make your marriage work. If there was, there wouldn't be counselors. We wouldn't have to do a program like this to talk about all these things. We'd say, just go buy this book and follow it 1 through 30 and you'll be fine. But is there something like, not tips, but simple, solid advice that you've learned that if folks follow this advice, not saying the road's not going to be difficult at times, but it's going to be a little easier as you move forward? I know that's a lot to ask you, but
You wanna go first?
I would say that if there was the one tip that I would say for sure is it's communication. I know that might be a bit cliche, but honestly, communication is key. And loving and trusting the other person in what they say, and that you need to hear, not just, I don't know, something we say, what is it, listen, but I listened, but I didn't hear, or I hear, I didn't listen. You got to listen and hear both. And you really need to understand your feelings. I think, like you said, real quick with the counseling part, a lot of that was just learning how to convey your feelings to the other person. Like to Karen, I just need to really truly explain my feelings to her, and then also process her feelings back to me. I mean, with interpretation, but we would have had none of that without communication.
Yeah, and I would
Excellent,
say
excellent.
the sacrament is important. That to me was essential, because that's what kept me there. Was this idea that I made a commitment to Michael and I made a commitment to God, and we'll somehow, if we can, we're going to make it work. And I know there's people out there that say that and can't do it, and I understand that for various reasons, and I'm not in judgment of them, but I'm saying for me, that's what kept our marriage strong, is that commitment we made when we stood in front of God on December 28th, 1996, and said forever. And even when it was difficult.
And those
see, Mike, now you don't have to remember the date. She just saved you there. I just said, I could see where you were going.
Yeah.
It's on the front of our house.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that we have a really quick story on the front of the house. We had a wedding gift, and it was a nice plaque that's right beside the front door that says this, House of Blaisdell established, and then it has the wedding day.
Oh, you're perfect.
Every day I come home from work, I'm reminded of the wedding day. It's great. So then I always.
That's one I've never understood. Guys will say, I don't remember. What? What do you mean you don't remember?
Yeah, really, I can understand that myself.
Father, you want to close?
I just want to say one quick thing. All those who may be divorced or whatever, you are welcome in our place. And you're welcome to accept the healing that the church has to offer you with all that. So please, please, please never, ever, ever think of yourself as a second-class citizen. You're right. Sometimes it just doesn't work out so well, and that's the way it goes. So you're welcome with us.
Karen and Mike, I thank you so much, because this wasn't easy, and I'm very happy that you agreed to do it. I hope it wasn't painful in any way, but Mike, you don't have to answer that right now. I'm kidding. I'm just having a little fun with you. But thank you. Thank you. Father?
You're welcome. Yeah, and what are we doing next week with all this?
We don't have
we
any.
off
We don't have
next
next
week?
week.
We're off next week.
I think we're off next week.
Yeah, it's the end. It's the last week of the month.
Yeah, so we're off next week.
It's Labor
and-
Day weekend.
Is it Labor Day weekend
Yeah.
next week?
Yeah, next weekend.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Wow, wait, how time flies. Okay, so we're off next week, but we will be back in force after that. Thank you for watching us, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it very, very much. Great, great stuff. And I'm grateful to all of you. Thanks for watching us tonight. See you soon.